Hey everyone, Jason Gibson here, and I am joined with Dr. Chris Townsend, and he's a professor, he's an author, but he is one of our strategy consultants at NPE, at National Performance for Education. And today we're going to have a conversation about substances, about vaping and alcohol and substance use in schools and there's just a lot that goes on with that. We have a lot of times in schools this day in which we have speakers come in and talk about drug-free day or alcohol-free day. And then we put vape detectors in bathrooms. But I think the conversation is a little bit bigger than that because we know like a one-time sit and get might get a little excitement. It doesn't bring about long-term change. In vape detectors, though, that's really great. It's just a reactive response instead of a proactive response. So we've invited Dr. Townsend to come in to have some conversations about this. And Chris, I'm thankful that you're here and that you're a part. Um, but let's just dive in. Like when you hear that the whole thing about vaping, alcohol, substances on campus, I don't know, where should we kick off this conversation?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. As you were talking, I was just thinking about the culture that substances aren't anything new to us, but they continue to evolve and they continue to show up in new ways and interesting ways. And innovation and technology is being implemented and they're being utilized. And so there become markets for certain groups of our populations that are targeted. And we get concerned when, for anybody, but certainly we become concerned when it's marketed and targeted towards our children and it's made to look fun and interesting for our children, whether it be in the form of candies or vape pens or whatever it is. And if you've looked lately, the vape pens, they've gotten very creative with how you would conceal vape pens, from it looking like a pencil, from an eraser to all kinds of things. And at first glance, it doesn't look like anything like a vape pen, but with a little knowledge and research, you might become a bit more suspicious and say, hey, that's finding its way into our classrooms, down our halls. And so it just
Okay,
made,
so that I appreciate you bringing that up because I hadn't actually thought about why the creators of vape pens and those things were actually creating them like that. There's
right,
been some videos that have circulated around social media in which teachers would be teaching and walking around the room and they go up to a desk and they would pick up something and they think it's just a flash drive and they look at it and they put it
right,
back down on the student's desk. But everyone in the class knows that that was an actual vape. And the
right,
teacher had no idea. And I
right.
hadn't thought about it, but that's a marketing ploy, right? That's
Absolutely.
because as an adult, if I vaped, there's actually no reason for my vape device to look like a USB thumb drive,
Right,
but it's super relevant if I'm 14-year-old in the high school trying to keep my vape pen away from my teacher noticing it.
right, right,
So I
right,
hadn't thought about it, but that makes sense. That's where, it's a subtle marketing tactic so that vaping would be more approachable to kids.
right. And, again, it's a culture. And so when you look at music, when you look at videos, when you look at everything that children love to do, when those things become embedded in the culture, then it's normalized. And, at those vulnerable ages where they're very impressionable developmentally, one of the key things that they want to be is accepted. They
Mm.
want to be in the in crowd. They want to be thought of first to be invited to the parties or whatever. And so socially, we know that our kids are vulnerable. And so when you introduce something like this as a part of the cool culture, the culture of acceptance, then our children become more likely that they might try it because of a peer. And we're all familiar with the strength of peer pressure and what that looks like. And so we do know that vaping, for example, vaping is not as innocent or not because the culture would say it's safe
mm.
and they don't have all the information or it won't harm you. It's not like tobacco, but it is a chemical. And so our children are operating in a place of not having all the information and not knowing the truth behind the dangers of just trying it and then it becoming a habit and then leading to some medical problems. So we generally think about addiction or abuse from addiction. And as a result, over a prolonged period of time, you have some health issues. And
So,
so,
so what I'm hearing is that vaping is just an extension of substances from the past, from smoking and alcohol. It's just an extension of it where consistent with,
mhm,
when you and I were growing up and before, that vaping is a status symbol to a degree in which if you're searching for acceptance, that's one of the ways to get some acceptance with the people that you perceive of value or cool in your
right,
eyes. So
yeah,
vaping is buried in acceptance. But the other thing that I heard you say is that, one of the things about vaping is there's a perceived sense of safety in it, in
mhm,
which you don't smell the smoke, you don't feel the burn,
right,
but there's this perceived sense of safety in it,
right,
even though it is a chemical and the research is not out there that's shown the safety at all. But the introduction of chemicals can have
right, right,
long-term negative effects.
mhm,
And then so you went from acceptance to this perceived safety that's not true, but then you went into the dependence upon it.
mhm.
So what does that look like? What, as you're looking at vaping, and how, what does that serve from a dependence level? What does that accomplish for
Yeah,
a child or teenager that's starting to
yeah.
vape?
And let me take a step back. Part of the that whole cool and social culture piece is one aspect of it, but you have to understand that all behavior is purposeful. We do nothing just because. We do things and repeat behaviors because we got something out of it, right?
Hmm,
And so when I've spoken with children about vaping, there was a lot of children who had anxiety and it was a part of the culture and someone said, "Hey, try this. This helps with your anxiousness."
hmm,
And so they may have gotten in it through an attempt to help with anxiousness. And they found that something about that smoking gave them some relief in some way.
hmm,
So I've heard that aspect of it, but then it's still creating a neural pathway of learning that says, this helped me. I felt a little better. And so then I'm going to go back and do that again when I feel anxious. So then
hmm,
you start seeing the misuse or abuse of something and to the point where it just becomes a part of my daily routine
hmm,
until it doesn't work anymore.
hmm,
And then when it doesn't work anymore, then you may start looking for something else. So we talk about gateways,
hmm,
an access point leading to something else. And so then over time you get into potential with smoking, lung problems with your ability to breathe properly. Particularly when you start talking about athletes, and this is a play that I will oftentimes use with the athletes when we talk about what difference does a second make. Just look at the Olympics, right?
hmm. Yeah.
And when you think you can still be a great athlete and still vape and still do these things, it impacts you.
Hmm,
It impacts you in many, many different ways, physiologically, short term, long term. And these are the things that we provide education for and we share it. And so that scared straight, we know that doesn't work.
hmm,
And so I don't lie to children. I don't do the scare tactics. I just provide information. And so I've taught children, say, hey, just let me share this with you. You're going to still make the decision that you're going to make, but I want you to be able to make an informed decision about what it is that you're doing.
hmm,
This is the research. This is what we see is happening. Here's some testimonials of people who started where you were and this is where they are now. And I want you to see and hear, see the results and hear where they are and how they're coping with life now. And so you're talking about taking children who, in this place of invincibility, I'm going to live forever. We got to give them the information to make it real so that they can see it and understand it so that they can make better decisions for themselves because they're fighting against a powerful thing called peer pressure.
Mm.
And the greatest advocates for this information is children themselves, one child talking with another child. The old folk like us, it's good to give them the information. But remember, we don't understand. We're too far removed. But when you can empower young people who do understand and who do know, and they're closest to the situations to say, hey, you matter to me and I'm afraid for you. Let's not do this. That's peer pressure also. So
Mm.
peer pressure goes both ways. The peer pressure into, hey, do this, it's cool. And then there's the peer pressure to say, hey, that's not cool. And
Mm.
and you're too valuable and you're too important to do this. There's another way to get
Mm.
your needs met. So
Yeah.
again, I think for us to empower our young people to be in the trenches in that way is just as important as us posting things on the walls and making infomercials and all those types of things. But to empower our youth in a peer support type of way, I think it's critical for this process of uh, helping our young people know the dangers of vaping and drug use,
Yeah.
alcohol use as well.
You know, one of the things that you talked about was a gateway. And
Hmm.
a lot of times when we hear gateway, we think, using a vape pen leads to putting cannabis in the vape pen that then shoots straight to I'm a meth addict.
Right.
And like that's a big stretch. And
Right.
it's certainly not impossible, but it's
Right.
a big stretch where like what I heard you say that I think is pretty powerful is I want to belong.
Right.
I might feel anxious. I don't feel a part. Somebody introduces vaping to me. So now I got the social, like I'm in the social gate now, right? I was on the
Hmm.
outside. I've been introduced to vaping. Now I vape. Now I'm on the inside. So there's the social gate. But I also felt anxious and all of these kind of wobbly feelings inside. But then the chemical in the vape actually settles that down for me. So
Hmm.
now I went to the uh, the dependency gate in which I just came in to be a part, and then now I'm going into, hey, this actually works for me. I'm ignoring the long-term medical impact that this can have on me that
Right.
we don't even know yet because we don't have 40 years of medical research that shows the long-term impact. We know that it's not good. So when I'm an educator or an administrator, and my response to this kid is, I'm going to get you in trouble.
Hmm.
Well, whatever punishment I give this child, give him a detention, steal his vape pen, not steal it, I take his vape pen, um, I give him a out of school suspension or in
Right.
school suspension. None of those strategies actually target my need, right? Because my
Right.
need is
Correct.
belonging, and then my need is dealing with the anxiety that I have inside.
Right.
So it's almost like there's a mismatch that
Right.
there's a punishment response, which we need to respond, but I'm not actually targeting the need.
Right. Right. Right.
So,
Right.
so what would you say to me as an administrator or an educator or a counselor in a school? Like, what's a tool? Like, I recognize that this kid is using a vape pen because of the effects that it has on calming him down. Like, what's something I could teach him to do instead? Like a
Right.
strategy or a skill or something. What tool could I give this kid to help remove the or step away from the dependency on the vape pen?
Right, right, yeah. Well, if you've been around children, there are terms that they use in life. It keeps changing, and by the time us old folk learn the new terms, they've already changed languages. But one of the things that they talk about is when life is lifing,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
When things are just bad, then you learn from your environment how to deal with bad things.
Hmm.
And so we look at the humanity of the child again, all behavior is purposeful. So this child is not intentionally just acting out just to act out because school generally is a safe haven. It's where you're reinforced. It's where you can become whatever it is that you want to become. They want to be successful. But when I don't know how to be because life is lifing and life is disrupting my desires for my life, then at the core of it all, they got to have somebody that they can talk with.
Mm,
And so while there may be a response to the child of, let's say, instead of out of school suspension, there may be an in school punishment. But how about not letting them miss academic time?
mm,
If it's not an aggressive, violent kind of reaction, but they just got caught with something, there's a learning opportunity here. And so,
mm,
what does that learning opportunity look like? Do they go somewhere, and are they placed in another environment, but it's still a learning environment?
mhm,
Are they not allowed to do their sporting events, or is the sporting event still a part of the mechanism for helping them? And
mm,
so sometimes we have to think about the things that we are taking or implementing, but at the core of it, you got to have a response to it, just as you said. So they're not getting suspended and sent to the streets. They're
mm,
not just going into ISS and they're sitting in a room writing sentences. That I'm dating my age, or just sitting there without instruction, but they're still being held accountable for the instruction. And so is it then service
mm,
to, is there something that they can do in the school that's still educational? It may still be using mathematics. It still may be using science in some way, but it's a service to the school in some way.
mm,
It could be still home economics. Are they now helping in this area? But it could be a service while you might think of it as punishment or something the child wouldn't want to do. It's a way of saying, I violated the relationship or the school rules. I have an obligation to honor the rules. So you got to do this, and it's a service, but you're still in school. So I'm just trying to be creative here to say, don't kick our kids out into the streets. It's a disservice, and it's not doing what we need to do, but we become creative to keep them in the atmosphere of school and learning so that they still feel a part of. When you kick them out, it feels like rejection all over again for whatever life is lifing, whatever is happening, that reinforces the thing that likely is causing them to use. Does
mm.
that make sense?
Yeah,
What I'm saying
absolutely.
there? So we have to create opportunities of inclusion um, that still holds them accountable for the learning and the access to the curriculum, just in a maybe a different way. But within that, it might be education around what it is that they're doing
Mm,
and why they might want to consider something else. Still learning, just in a different environment with some extra attention in that needs area. It'll
mm,
just take, and I would say, uh, how do you come up with these type of programs? Listen to the needs of the children.
mm.
When they get in trouble, you catch them, have a conversation. How did you get here? Because most of the time we're punitive and we never ask the right questions. So, what happened? What led you to do this? What was happening with you that caused you to do this?
Mhm.
And how do you think it's impacted other people? And what did it do to those other people when as a result of you doing this? So
Yeah.
it's you getting an understanding and then giving them the ability to make it right. So that's inclusion.
Mm.
And now you've kept a child in school. You didn't let the elements get to them. You still protected them, and we don't lose time.
Yeah.
And who knows who they will become as a result of not being kicked out. They may become one of your better students because they were given the chance because they received love, they received the attention, they continue to send the instruction so they don't get behind. So life doesn't keep life and it doesn't get worse, but you give them a way out and up in a better way.
Mm. Well, I think that's a powerful thing to end on. And just for me, I'll just summarize it real quick. What you're talking about is there's prevention activities, which are the
Yes.
drug-free days and posters and all of those things that can be out there. And then there's a a consequence, a punishment. Like if you get caught with this stuff, these are the
Right.
things that are going to happen. But what you're talking about, and I think this is powerful for educators and administrators to consider at their school, is okay, what are the intervention pieces that you
Hmm.
have in the midst? Okay, so we've taught them not to do this, we've communicated with clarity, we have the punishment responses that we have when you break the code of conduct or the student discipline handbook.
Right.
But the intervention pieces, now this is what we're going to do. You
Right.
may have in school suspension, but as a part of it, we're actually going to start targeting and finding the needs that you have that you're
Right.
communicating to us through you using a vape pen or this
Right.
substance. So
Correct.
we're going to identify your needs because they're going to be specific to you. And then we're going to give you not only intervention, but some education
Right.
that rather than just being in trouble, we're going to have a conversation about what's going on. What do you need? Because we're going to lean on our experience with other students too.
Right.
Then we're going to say, okay, let's talk about this. And then let's give you some other avenues in which we can help you find a place to belong, a place to feel a part, a place to feel connected. But
Yes.
then we're also going to give you some tools to deal with, well, man, like I felt really anxious. And when I take a hit of my vape, it just kind of settles me down. We're
Right.
going to give you some more tools to do that.
Yes.
So it's giving those pieces. And there's something powerful that you said, and we're going to have rested a restoration. And what I mean by that is if I'm in your classroom, you catch me with a vape pen, you send me to the office, I go through this intervention process and I get in trouble, like the code of conduct
Right.
says, but you're educating me, you're helping me learn about myself, you're helping me
Right.
communicate with what's going on. But then you're also requiring a restoration process in which
Yes.
I'm now going to have to re-engage with that teacher
Yes.
and restore that relationship because of what I chose to do or to
Right.
have in his or her classroom.
Yes.
So it's like not just saying, let's have a no vape day and then this is how you get in trouble, but putting that education, intervention, and restoration process in the middle and listening to the students in your culture and how that might be best served with your
Right.
students. So that would be powerful. Hey, if you like these resources, if you like these ideas and many of the things that Dr. Townsend has shared, we've got a blog where we have more resources specific in this area that he has pulled together that might extend this conversation in a real meaningful way. And we love to hear more from you that if you've got ideas that you could share, you could comment, you could just go to our contact us page and send it that way. But we want to continue the conversation, not for our benefit or your benefit, but for the benefit of the students that we're caring for in our buildings. Thanks for being a part.